Welcome to Boomcast, the official podcast from Boombox.io. I'm Music by Lucas.
And I'm Noise London. And today we're going to be talking about how to stand out in the music industry.
It feels like the industry is getting more and more crowded. It feels like music's getting created faster and faster. Now you got AI in the mix. So how do you stand out to labels, to the Spotify algorithm? How do you grow a fan base? That's what we're going to cover today.
Don't forget that these podcasts wouldn't be possible without Boombox.io. So if you have a moment, go check them out. The link is in the description. And just so you know, Boombox is a platform designed for musicians, producers, and engineers where you can share your tracks, get timestamp feedback, get comments in the form of voice notes, and my new favorite feature, which is playlisting. This allows you to bring all your tracks together into one playlist, which you can then share privately with friends, record labels, and so on. Lucas, what are you most excited about in the Boombox platform?
I'm most excited for the profiles feature. So you're going to be able to create your own profile so that you can then make that live and get other people to find your profile so they can collab with you. And so you can find other people's profiles. Like if you need a vocalist, you'll be able to find them to collab with. If you need someone that produces a specific genre or an engineer to master your track, you're going to be able to find all of that on Boombox. So go create your free account with the link in the description below. So if you're a music artist and you're spending all your time in the studio, you're making your music and maybe you're investing your own, money into it. Maybe it's your side hustle or whatever. You're working late at night making that music. Like, how do you then, it seems like there's this issue where you're done making the music and then it's like, now what? How do you get that music to stand out? Obviously, the music making process itself, you have to come up with a way to make your actual music unique and to have that stand out. We can talk about that. But I think that's the thing is what do you do after the song is finished? What's that next step to be able to get that track heard and, to get label A&Rs to hear it, Spotify algorithm? I want to dive into all that today.
I think something that I'm seeing a lot of at the moment is that there are two approaches. People are either focusing on the creation of the track or the recreation, i.e. the performance of the track. So we're either seeing people start to share their journey on how they created that piece of music, which gives a lot of insight. Obviously, it shares their techniques, their tips, what DAW they're using, which creates a connection with other producers and other musicians. And then we have the flip side, which I think has been very powerful, especially in the dance music realm, of the performance aspect. It's very easy to get some album artwork, put your song behind it, and stick it online. But what about actually showing people what that would feel and sound like live?
Right.
And there's a couple of people who are doing this in a very similar way. I think the most obvious one is Fred again.
Yep.
That added performance of electronic music, that looseness, that human feel to something that's so naturally sort of quantized and tight, definitely adds a lot of excitement.
Right. And for people who don't know Fred again, it's like he does these videos where he's showing you the creation process in the most raw format with his drum machine and just creating kind of tracks live, and you're like, whoa, what just happened? How did that become this?
Absolutely. And there is another artist I'm thinking of. I'm actually just have to find her.
Yeah.
But there's a couple. There's Bayer Music, Baer Music. Go check her out on Instagram. I found her recently, and she's doing these just sort of small performances of her records online, which again, it just gives you a sort of deeper connection with the artist themselves.
Yeah.
And also you'd have a feeling for what that would sound like live, because I think ultimately, I don't know if you agree with me on this, but that's where most music is going to end up, or where most people want music to end up, is on stage or in the club,
right,
or on the radio. I still count the radio as live music.
Sure. I mean, you look at Taylor Swift, they're saying is going to be the first person to break $1 billion with her tour that she's on right now. Not to say that that's the thing that people should focus on, but live music is still growing, and it's still becoming, something, especially since all the things that we went through over the last few years, it's on the rise. But I think my thought though is that there's also a lot to be said about performing your music live on and coming up with a way to do that uniquely to stand out on social media, which is kind of what we were talking about with Fred again, because I feel like there's something special when you watch someone's social post, and I don't know if you've ever felt like this, but it's where like you feel like they're performing a special concert just for you. Like it's like they're doing it, obviously they're posting it to their whole fan base, but it's something where they kind of make it intimate and they kind of make it like it's like this thing where they're looking right at you, they're playing it for you, or they're performing it for you, and it just feels like a special connection.
Also, they're showing like an additional skill set that not a lot of people have. Performing something live is incredibly difficult. Performing it live well is commended these days. So it's commended so highly because you can make all the mistakes you want in the studio when no one's looking, but when you're performing live, you got to nail that. The other artist who I'm thinking of is someone called Kenya Grace. So that's KenyaGrace. She's blown up. She does all these really cool home-written records. Her and I think looks like a Native Instruments machine. Different background every time. She looks cool too, but she makes it seem very simple. Watching that, not now, but as a younger producer, I'd be like, wow, I can do that. It's immediately inspiring because all I see her using is a machine and a microphone. Now, I've used a machine. I've also been a singer in the past, and those are two skills that are actually so difficult, right? And to do them together, to play an instrument and to sing at the same time, let's call the machine an instrument for now, because that's essentially what it's being used at in this scenario. And we'll leave some links in the description so you can go check these Instagram pages out and actually have a look for yourselves. That's a
good point because of the reference aspect of it.
Yeah.
Because like it's helpful to have some places to jump off of when you're looking for like how to do this kind of stuff. Because if you're a producer and you're curious of like, how do I perform my music? It could be helpful to have something to look at. But also, of course, there's multiple ways. Like you could DJ it, you could do it. You're talking about with some of these references, like Fred again, just talking about the drum machine or performing the melody on the piano, or even just like, I don't know, showing the process. But the performance aspect of it, I think, is really helpful to stand out.
Also, you got to look cool. I'm sorry, like I don't care what people say these days. Like, I'm not into fashion. Get into fashion. Stop messing around. It's not that difficult. Create a Pinterest board. Find what you're into. Doesn't have to be the latest trend. It's just something that should speak to you. Ultimately, if you don't want to show your face, you could put a balaclava on. I think there are always options. You could blur yourself out, but you do have to be a part of the artistry. And I don't think that's anything new. I don't think it's anything new at all, because back in the day, if you think about any other of the successful artists, you bought into their image just as much as you bought into their music. And there was a lot of synergy between the two. I think of AC/DC, they was wearing school uniforms. Yeah. Right, and that was like really weird and quirky. Okay, definitely not fashionable. I'll say that much. But it was something different that made them stand out amongst a group of, amongst many other rock bands who took themselves very seriously. And then all of a sudden, you had a very talented rock band who didn't take themselves seriously or brought something different to the table. I also think it's one of the reasons Billie Eilish blew up so early on, because she was so avant-garde with her street style at the time that when you saw her in a YouTube thumbnail or on Instagram, there was this instant curiosity towards like, who is that and why does she dress like that? And I actually hated it at first. I was like, God, this is so cringe. But then I heard her sing and I was like, wow, okay, I can see why she has been styled like this or styled herself in this way.
It's a really good point, because also, like you're saying, like the lack of fashion could actually be your fashion choice. That's what I always think is funny. Right. Like some people are, they're saying, well, I don't want to, be doing this thing that everybody else is doing. And it's like, well, that's your choice is to do the opposite of it. But you have to, whatever choice you make, you have to own it. Whether you choose to be extroverted in your reels or introverted, or you choose to be quirky, or you choose to have a specific style, or like you're saying, like a fashion or sound in your music, you got to figure out what those aspects are about you that make you musically, and your vibes and your appearance and everything else, and own them.
Yeah, black t-shirt, black jeans isn't as memorable as it once was. You know, it's just kind of, I get that that's the uniform in dance music. And also, this isn't to take away from the music. This isn't to say that you could dress cool and have bad music and you'll become successful. Obviously, the two have to speak to one another. They have to be of the same level. If anything, you know, the music does have to be better than the aesthetic, because that's just a superficial strategy. So on the note of collaboration, and I'm going to tell like a part of the story is just slightly unrelated, but I went to the studio out here in Medellin, Colombia, where I am right now. And it's a really cool studio called La Jungla, but it used to be very bad. The owner was telling me. And then they put this living wall in, these neon lights, and it looks like a jungle now. It is so cool. And as a studio, although it may not be the best sounding studio with the best monitors, it stands out from an aesthetic point of view, which creates a vibe, which means that you want to post when you're in the studio, which automatically creates better marketing for the studio and those artists who work there. So you can apply that approach, that aesthetic approach, to to lots of different industries, businesses. Ultimately, right, you know, it's still got to be a great place to work. So I'm in the studio working there. I go to the bathroom, which is through the office. I meet this guy, and we just start talking. We're just, you know, chatting shit about whatever. But I wasn't really listening to him because I noticed that he had such a musical voice, such a cool voice. He's from Toronto, but has lived in Los Angeles a lot of his life. And so I immediately said to him, "Hey man, do you want to jump on this track with me?" And he was like, "Absolutely, let's take a listen." So I play on the track. He's like, "Okay, this is fire," and explained to him exactly what I wanted. He nailed it in one take. This is something that could have never been possible without him and without that collaboration. So that brought an extra flavor to the record, an extra life to the record, which is going to help it stand out. Sometimes it's not something super obvious. Sometimes it's an additional layer. And that's what you're talking about. It's like delegation can be intentional, right? Yeah. But sometimes it can also be in the moment, and you have to have the self-awareness to be able to look out for something like that too, and not be protective of your artistry.
Yes, it's so true, because I think we all fall for that protection of our artistry, and we don't let ourselves expand. I mean, you get to a certain point, I think, where as a music artist, you reach a level where you really can't break through to the next level unless something in your life changes. Like, unless you either reach out of your comfort zone, or you start something new, or you get inspired by something. Like, there's a certain point where, like, you figured out everything you need to figure out at that level. But once you push yourself out of that, you reach new levels. But that's like the way to get there. And I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but it's kind of like that with everything that I've done too. Is it's like, you know, I think this happens creatively too. Like, you know, you get to a certain point where you get a little bit routine. And when you're always routine doing the same thing, eventually it just keeps leading to the same results. And if those same results equal you not getting signed, if that's your goal, or you not building a fan base or growing on social media, if that's your goal, or if your music, you know, not standing out, then there's got to be something that you got to switch. It's not just, I got to rehearse and keep practicing the same thing and eventually it will get there. Yeah, that's part of it, but it also is pushing yourself out and doing things that you're not already doing.
And ultimately, like, go have fun. This is why we're in music. Go have fun. Go meet people. Go vibe in the studio. Hey, you book a studio session for 6 hours and you spend 4 of it messing around and having a great time. Well, actually, that's so important, and building those relationships and those connections. If me and this person I was working with called Joseph Royal hadn't like gotten on and weren't shooting the shit before we'd actually jumped into the session, then we probably wouldn't have turned up with the vocals, because he just jumped on the mic. I was like, "Hey, I want you to imagine that you're coming back from the rave in Tulum at 7 a.m. He was like, "I was at the rave in Tulum at 7 a.m. And I was like, "In January?" And I was like, "Yeah, I was there too," you know? So it was funny. We were even in the same place at the same time. That's funny. And that made it even funnier. And he just like nailed the concept. And it was only as a result of messing around and talking and finding out more about one another, which created a deeper connection, which then, ended up showing up in the vocals and the recording on the track.
That is awesome.
Yeah, it was good fun. I think another great, and this is something to be careful of, but this is something that a lot of the top artists do. in order to stand out, especially when genres become repetitive. But genre fusion, and this is usually cultural fusion. And I say this carefully because I think it's important that when, as artists, we do take inspiration from other cultures, we also are paying homage, right? And we need to be respectful of that. We need to understand that we can't just take and try and make things our own. If you're going to be influenced by another country's instruments or music, it's definitely worth taking a second to educate oneself on the history of that country or the history of that country's art, and then also finding a way to pay homage to those musicians who maybe you sampled or that country's music in a way that's respectful. But I find that to be something that people do all the time in hip hop and dance music, is blending, maybe it's organic
different
and electronic
styles.
Instrumentation. Yeah. And I think it works really well.
Yeah, there was a really good point that Kashmir made, a really great producer, basically was saying, give the track something that it doesn't already have. So for example, if the track has a lot of synth style sounds, throw in something organic, or vice versa. Or if it has a lot of loops, throw in something that's not just a loop. If it doesn't have any one shots, throw in a one shot. No, it works in so many different ways, but it's that collaboration side as well, is like, bringing something new. And if you're watching this and you've never, or listening to this and you've never collabed before for whatever reason, and that would be actually really cool to know in the comments, like why you haven't collabed, or if you have collabed, like what your experience has been, positive and negative. But I think the thing is, like, it's one of those things where you just don't know until if you tried it. And honestly, like, the first collab could be a total failure, and that's totally fine. Like, it sounds funny, but collabing,
100 collabs would be a total
right?
failure.
Because you may agree, but or not. But I feel like collabing is almost like dating. Like, it's like it doesn't always go well. Sometimes there's some short collaborations, and sometimes there's some long-term relationship collaborations that lead to many collabs, and a beautiful relationship. But you have to try, otherwise, you don't get closer to, and you don't know what you like and what you don't like, right? Because like with dating, people are like, well, what's your type, or what are you interested in, or what are your how do you know if you haven't tried? That's the same thing with artists. Like, you learn eventually. Like, I learned that I liked to collab specifically with people who are more technical, because I'm not very technical when it comes to production. I like to throw in ideas and kind of mess around, and sometimes my projects can be a little bit messy, and so I like kind of people who, like, I tried collabing with people who were also messy or messier than me, and that did not go well. Like, we didn't really finish the tracks. Like, I had to all of a sudden be the organized one and try to clean up all the tracks, and those didn't really go well.
I think this is the perfect time to mention our sponsor, Boombox, the home of collaboration, which is here to make collaboration easier. But Boombox does this by providing musicians with a platform where you can upload your track, version 1, 2, 3, 4. There's also versioning, and then whoever's collaborating on the track can leave timestamp feedback. Now, you can also edit the permissions, so you can control who can do what, which is also quite useful. Bit of a power trip, but sometimes necessary. And this is a great way to get those collaborations to finish quicker, because you're not getting lost in translation, and then bundle those tracks up that you create by yourself with other producers into one playlist so you can send them out really quickly. And no other platform does this as well as Boombox. Yeah,
and I will actually be using Boombox for my new record label, for the track creation, all the different artists that are on my new label, which is launching later this month. Once they're signed, we'll be creating their tracks via Boombox and collaborating with each other. So more updates to come on that. But that's how much that's how awesome it is with collaboration features.
I like your note before on, trying not to focus too much on your weaknesses, and not necessarily relying on someone else to do that for you, but finding someone who fills the gaps. I think you're right when you're saying that finding a collaborator is exactly like dating, because if you're too similar in certain aspects, you're going to keep clashing all the time because you're going to keep disagreeing. Whereas I'm actually quite technical and tidy, and I like working with vocalists. Vocalists can loosen things up a little bit, or musicians who are more sort of fluid on the piano, because I tend to just kind of knock it in and then push the MIDI around until it feels right. That doesn't always give me the most natural feel. Triple down on your strengths and then figure out what your weaknesses are. Obviously, there's a lot of merit in working on your weaknesses, but you have to make a decision as to how much time and effort you're going to put in, versus is it just worth finding someone else to do it. And like you said, you're also not going to find the right person the first time round.
As a music artist, fixing your weaknesses will hold you back more than just focusing on your strengths. This goes with not only your music, but also your socials. For example, if you're just focused all the time on your socials, on trying to get everything perfect, trying to have the perfect aesthetic, the perfect bio, the perfect profile picture, your content has to have high quality cameras, all that kind of stuff, you're going to end up not posting. Perfectionism is what holds you back, but you're so good at, I mean specifically perfectionism in the areas where you have your weaknesses. So instead, work with other people whose strengths are your weaknesses, and you'll succeed a lot faster. Focus on your strengths, because your strengths are what you're remembered for. Your strengths are what make you stand out and what make people, like if you're really good with melodies, people are going to remember that. They're going to be like, wow, I love your melodies. Or if you're, whatever that specific strength is, like Avicii with his like mixing folk music with electronic music, like huge strength. And that's what a lot of his music was huge hits for. So yeah, double down on your strengths. If you want to focus on your weaknesses, you can, but don't let your weaknesses hold you back, and don't give them all your time and attention.
Yeah, like if I want to start putting Latin influence styles into my music, it's going to be a lot harder and take a lot longer for me to learn Spanish. And I did actually do a class on how to play the percussion the other day, which was really, really good fun. But I don't think that I can travel with a djembe. I already have enough stuff. And I wish I could. So just be realistic. If you really want to add it to your skill set and you think it's worth it, go for it. But otherwise, don't focus too much on acquiring skills that are going to eat into all your time and take away from what's important. So let's round it up with, I think, the 3 key points that we've taken away from how to stand out. Let's go from least important to most important. Least important being you can stand out aesthetically. You can look different. Focus on having some sort of continuity with your image. And that doesn't mean go out and spend hundreds or thousands of dollars on clothing. Just figure out an image or a color or something that you can relate to, that you're going to start using more consistently, so that when you show up, there's that familiarity. And then the second point, I believe, was fusion, genre fusion. Is that where we landed for the second point? Right. So find a way to use contrasting sounds or styles in order to stick out from the noise. From, is it just tech house, or is it tech house with, Southern American flavor? As an example, a lot of people are doing that right now, but as an example. And then the third point is embark on your collaborative journey, and don't be put off by unsuccessful collaborations, because you will have a lot of them. It's just natural. You don't become friends with everyone you meet, unless you're disingenuous. One last thank you to Boombox.io for making this podcast happen. It is the home of collaboration. Link is in the description below, so go check it out when you get a moment. If you're a musician, it's the perfect platform to help you with your workflow and your collaborations.